Hello there, I'm Anne Edwards and welcome to GE13, the Showdown. The time has come once again for us ordinary Malaysians to go to the polls. But who do we vote for and on what do we base our decision on? With me to tell us more is Mr. Jonson Chong, who is former politician and is currently head of School of Business and Law at a private university college right here in Petaling Jaya. Welcome. Can I call you Jonson?
Sure.
Great. How should ordinary Malaysians, young and old, approach the decision on who do we vote for?
Okay, you've asked a very big question there. See, we have to start by asking ourselves this question. When we vote, what's the objective behind the vote? A lot of Malaysians today, if you ask them this basic question, they will tell you, oh, we're voting for change. But that's not the ultimate. Is change a good in itself? Not necessarily. So, more importantly, is change for what? Change for the better? Change for happiness? Change for change's sake? So my argument would be, Malaysians, ordinary Malaysians, young and old, they want a better life. They want, ultimately, all of us, no one will ever deny that. We want happiness. But here, I want to make a distinction between normal happiness that people associate with buying a new car or eating their favorite nasi lemak, because that's transient, that's something that just passes. But what I'm talking about is contentment, the joy, the fulfillment, right? So if we use the analogy of a car, some people buy a car because, oh, it's flash, you feel cool driving in it. Some people buy a car because they want to get from A to Z and they don't care what it looks like. But to me, this decision that Malaysians have to make in a couple of weeks' time is much more important than buying a car. It's not going to only affect our driving pleasure, but it's going to affect generations to come, the nation that we are going to live in and our children are going to grow up in. So basically,
what do they need to take into account?
What they need to take into account then is these politicians that they are going to vote for, are they, number one, capable of acting in the interest of the people? Number two, are they trustworthy enough to do what they are elected to do? But having said that, you see, I don't want to give impression that we make a vote and we leave it to the politicians to do it. Democracy is not something that happens once in every 5 years. Yeah. It is something that happens throughout the years.
But how can we really tell? Because politics is actually all about propaganda. There's a very thin line between reality and propaganda. So how do we base our decision on so that we do not make a mistake?
That's a very valid question. I mean, this is where the media comes in, isn't it? Do they report the truth? Don't they report the truth? Is this propaganda? Is this not propaganda? This is why, to me, I'm in a much better place. I'm in education. I'm teaching people to judge for themselves. Is this propaganda or is this facts, right? So, I mean, that's something that I can't really say, but what I can only say is don't just read from one source, read from all sources and speak to people. I mean, just because we have a prejudice against the ruling parties and then we say, oh, these guys are bad, so I don't want to talk to anyone from there. But that's silly.
So you just block your mind and everything.
Exactly.
Yeah?
One of the foremost behavioral economists today, he's written a book recently and it's called Thinking Fast and Slow. But I alluded to that in an article. When we think fast, we are actually reacting. We are not actually thinking. But we should take time and step back and look at all the available facts. And then, based on the objectives, decide.
So we'll take a step back just for a short while. We'll take a short break and reflect. We'll come back with Jonson Chong right here on GE13 The Showdown. Stay with us. Yes, thanks for staying with us. GE13, the Showdown. We've been talking to Jonson Chong, who is a lawyer and also former politician. Let's move on to young voters. 6 million out of the 13 million registered voters right here in Malaysia. What do they want?
Well, I think that question is a bit loaded in the sense that not all young voters are going to be exactly the same. I think there is a substantial portion there that thinks, wow, this ruling government has just done a very bad job over 50 years. But there is another group that would very clearly say, look, if not for what this government has done, we wouldn't be here today. But I would imagine that the biggest chunk, they may not be the majority, but the biggest chunk is still apathy, unfortunately. And that is very sad, because this is going to affect them much more than us older folks. Yeah, I think so. I mean, you see, those who speak loudest, we tend to think that they are the ones who are the majority. But it's not those that speak loudest. It's the silence that is deafening. And if you go down to the streets, you talk to any 22-year-old, ask them, have you registered to vote? I dare say maybe 3 or 4 out of 10 have not registered to vote. Why is that? That is substantial. If it is 40%, it's not the majority, but still it is probably the biggest chunk.
You say that because perhaps they don't want to, or they're not really bothered, they're not interested. These kind of reasons.
Well, I mean, if they are university-going students, they're too busy to bother with that, or they are having fun. But on the other hand, even if they knew about politics, I mean, honestly, it is so bewildering out there. Oh, this party is saying this, that party is saying that, and then there's this allegations against this opposition politician, there's this. So this is confusing. Like, wow, what's the difference? You know, I'll leave it to the politicians.
Are young voters really for Pakatan Rakyat, really for the opposition? Perception has it that they vote for Pakatan also because they vote out of anger.
Well, if you put it that way, it's not just the young voters. I think many Malaysians would vote out of anger. And I would caution against that, because if you vote out of anger, out of hate, you will produce a government that is going to be fueled by the hate that you have put into the vote. Because, you see, if you go back to what Gandhi said, the means and the ends must be the same. Right. If you drive with anger, you're likely to end up with some road rage incident. But if you drive fueled by compassion or whatever else it might be, then the result will be very different. And so if we have this, you know, millions of people going to the polling booths and they are voting out of anger, again, that's not thinking, that's reacting. If you thought carefully, you would actually look at the individual candidates in your constituency and make a decision based on that.
So do we look at personalities, or do we look at the parties that these candidates represent?
No, you look at the principles that these individual candidates stand by. If you have a chance, email them, write them. Okay. Do they bother to even respond to you? Find out from the PA, can I have your boss's mobile number? I just want to send him an SMS. Will he respond? 1 line, 2 lines. Thank you. You're welcome. That speaks volumes. If you don't even have that, you know, decency to respond now.
You know, I totally agree with you, because even from the media, when, like, for example, you pick up the phone right away, you know, and that gives us a very good feeling and security. Okay, moving on to, because we've got just about, you know, less than a minute left. You are writing an article which will be published, cited to be published on nomination day. Briefly tell us, what is it about?
Well, I mean, it started with one of your editors asking me, you know, what do young voters think? Just exactly what you said. And frankly, like I've said, I don't know, but I do know they ought to think about certain things. Because a lot of people are now talking about 2 things that is going to fuel their voting decision or pattern. One is we want a 2-party system. Now, my question back to them is a two-party system going to deliver the kind of country that you want?
Like what we have in the US.
Exactly, right? I mean, is there a lot of difference between the two? To me, not really, honestly. Yeah. And then the second one is, well, unfortunately, because of the nature of the popularity of this acronym, I have to name the party, right? It says anything but UMNO. It's ABU. But for me, I prefer ABM. Any candidate that will deliver a better Malaysia, I'm prepared to vote for that candidate.
A better Malaysia. On that note, we'll need to wrap up the show, unfortunately. Thank you so much, Jonson, for sharing and also giving your views on voting patterns, and also how do we base our decision on when we vote. Take a step back, reflect, and decide very, very intelligently. I'm Anna Gus. Thank you so much for your time. We'll see you once again. Bye-bye.